It is Wednesday, the 14th of January, so you know the drill. It's time for the next edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis here at thecardinalnation.com and available via all your favorite podcast apps. And if there is a podcast app that you're interested in that we don't support, let us know and we'll see if we can go figure it out. So we have a lot to cover this time around. Kyle and I are both getting ready for a winter warm-up this coming weekend, but the Cardinals awoke from their Christmas/New Year slumber and have made some moves that, in my opinion, signal that they may be done for this winter. We'll see, but let's start with the announcement that was actually formally announced last, and that was late in the day on Tuesday. The Cardinals formalized the signing of right-handed reliever Ryan Stanek, 34-year-old, who pitched for the Mets, Astros, Tampa Bay Rays, a number of teams in the past, had some success as an opener, had some success as a late inning guy, but is coming off an uneven time with the Mets. And Stanek, of course, took the 40-man roster spot that was vacated by Nolan Arenado. And we'll talk about that Arenado trade in a few minutes. But Ryan Stanek seems to be the veteran guy, that they've added to the pen. I think, what are they paying him, like $4 million, something like that?
That's it, with the $6 million option for next season.
Right. So it's not a big dollar acquisition, but they need some veteranness, if that's a word, down the pen. What's your take on the Stanek move?
Yeah, again, I think that a lot of people have really nailed it with this. This is exactly like the Andrew Kittredge signing or the Phil Maton signing. It's just about bringing a veteran into a relatively inexperienced bullpen and maybe having an opportunity to flip that veteran if the veteran has success at the deadline for prospects, or a prospect or whatever, some capital of some sort. So it's an investment into the future on a very short-term deal that is also an investment in the immediate. So again, kind of a no-brainer move to bring in somebody like this on this kind of contract. Really, he's struggled a lot against lefties, right? Like lefties are his issue. So if his high velocity fastball, he has a really good slider. His slider's kind of his calling card, an interesting splitter to kind of couple it all together. I would imagine that he'll be used primarily against righties, strategically against righties, unless they use him in late inning. But yeah, they'll toy them, they'll tweak him, they'll have him throw that 98-mile-an-hour fastball and hope to get the most out of him, like the other 30 organizations in baseball already have, because he's one of these guys who has pitched in everywhere.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with the three-batter rule, it's harder to find harder to hide a guy who has handedness issues. But still, if he's effective against the majority of the batters or right-handers, that's a positive, I think. And certainly, I don't think there's any doubt he's going to make the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, like with the Cardinals being in the situation that they're in, it doesn't really matter if he can't get lefties out. He's going to get opportunities against lefties because it doesn't really matter so much.
Now, this is precluding some of our discussions coming up later in the podcast, where we finally will talk about minor league rotations. We promise, unless one of us blathers on too long. But
me.
I don't want to mention any names, Kyle.
It was me.
Okay. The Cardinals quietly signed a journeyman, Bruce Zimmermann, journeyman starting pitcher, who actually had some fairly significant major league appearances with the Orioles in the early part of this decade, like 27 starts, something like that, but has bounced around since. And because of 30 years old, as I said, because of his time up and down over the last few years, he's used up all his minor league options. So really, it looks like Bruce Zimmermann's another guy who's going to provide some starting pitching insurance at Memphis. Is he a guy that we should get excited about, or is he, another guy?
Brian, I could be wrong, but I think that Mr. Zimmermann was the 2022 opening day starter for the Baltimore Orioles.
Wow.
I could be wrong about that. I probably, again, show prep.
When did they stop losing and start winning?
It would have been the year right before all the winning happened, Brian. It would have been way before the winning happened.
Okay.
But yeah, I recall watching him as a prospect, and it was really his changeup and his slider to lefties that was his calling card. And in some ways, he's kind of like, now he doesn't throw for, he's kind of like if everything had worked out for Connor Thomas in some ways. Like they kind of both throw from a funky angle. It's all about off speed. They were never going to throw with high velocity. And then if you can turn that into something, you can last around baseball between the majors and the minors for a couple of years as a depth option. So again, it depends on what you're looking forward to getting excited about. If you're looking for a high velocity righty that you can dream on or a high velocity lefty. That's not this guy. This is not like a position where, not a player where all of a sudden he's going to be pitching in the major leagues and you're going to be like, wow, holy cow. Even with he's gotten to some little extra velo this offseason with the sinker, but he's just a great depth piece that this organization needs. And I would imagine, Brian, we look and we say maybe the starting rotation, but I think that this is another call to a lefty potential bullpen option down the road to help insulate the bullpen at the major league level.
And Zimmermann, along with those 27 starts, made 11 relief appearances in the majors. So it's not a role that he can't handle. And who knows, like you say, maybe if they need a long man or something, they might make him into that. Now, again, because of the no options, the Cardinals can add Zimmermann to the 40 man. They can bring him up. They just can't send him back down again without putting him through waivers. And, given his history, he would probably walk at that point, but who knows?
Yeah. Perfectly surmised, Brian.
All right, so the big deal announced on Tuesday morning, and there wasn't a lot of buzz about it until it, was formalized, maybe a few hours before. But of course, the Cardinals, after maybe 15, 16 months of uncertainty, was able to execute a trade for Nolan Arenado, sending him to the Arizona Diamondbacks, along with $31 million of his $42 million remaining financial commitment. And in return, the Cardinals received a right-handed pitcher, Jack Martinez, who was their eighth rounder in 2025, hasn't pitched yet as a professional. First of all, your take on Nolan Arenado, and then second, let's talk a little bit about Jack Martinez.
Yeah, my first take is that I remember few days in the last decade of Cardinal baseball that were as exciting as the night that the Cardinals traded officially for Nolan Arenado. And it's a shame that the winning didn't come with it. It's a shame that the only time we could get really excited about it was the 2022 season. 2022, yeah, the 2022 season. And that was the only season that we saw the best of him. The 2021 season was uneven. The second half of his 2021 season was solid.
And then still a three-time All-Star in 5 of his years here. And, it's just the drop-off was so significant in 2025, and his, inability to his splits declined so badly. They really had to do something.
Exactly. But no, that's just where my mind goes. It was just such a disappointing time in Cardinal baseball that he was a part of a roster of. And it's a shame that it wasn't more celebratory, that there weren't more things to get excited about, including his own performance. And just like everybody else says, it signals in a very loud way the end of one era of Cardinal baseball, I think, and the beginning of another.
And it's sad, this era, and would call it the Goldie Arenado, Sonny Gray, Wilson Contreras era. The Cardinals spent a lot of money to bring these guys in from outside the organization, either in trade return, or in financial commitment, and draft picks lost, and international money lost. And the reality is those years were not productive in the postseason. They had that one, 2 games and out in 2022, and that's really it. So it just goes to show you that in my mind, it's a positive reinforcement of the change in direction for the organization to get back to building enough depth so that when you add those kind of players, you have a strong enough core that you have a team that can go deep into the playoffs, because those guys alone weren't enough.
Yeah, and it's funny, the team that they traded him to, the Arizona Diamondbacks, really are kind of an example of an organization that just a couple years ago did kind of what the Cardinals are doing right now. They renovated their farm system. They brought in more instructors. They, had an early draft pick and drafted Corbin Carroll. You might say in some ways JJ Weatherholt, the Cardinals are hoping that JJ Weatherholt becomes the Diamondbacks version.
Hey, I would book that tomorrow.
Yeah, if it's anything like that at all, it would be a miracle. Nothing against JJ, but it's just so hard to be that caliber of major league player. But that's all just to say that they're following, not to a T, but they're following their version of what the Diamondbacks went through. And the Diamondbacks got to a World Series because of it. That they got to it probably early, and it's kind of stifled how everything goes from there. But that's what the Cardinals are trying to be. They're trying to be in 2 or 3 years where they can look and add somebody better than Arenado with some of their prospect capital.
Now, I will say, and I'm not an expert on the Diamondbacks, but I can look at their record just like everybody else. And Arenado, wanted to go play for a winner. He turned down the Astros a year ago, which probably was a bad decision on his part. But the reality is the Diamondbacks won only 2 more games than the Cardinals last year. Both of them finished in fourth place, a distant fourth place. Arenado knows what it's like to be an also ran in a very tough NL West division, which now he's gone back to. You mentioned the Diamondbacks made the playoffs once and had a good run, but that's the only time they made the playoffs in the last 8 years. And the last time Arizona won the NL West was back in 2011. And there's
Uh-huh.
no chance. There's a limited chance that they're going to, beat the Dodgers and the Padres, and then you got the Giants. I mean, it's just a tough. So I don't know if Nolan Arenado's, going to have a chance to win a World Series, in the rest of his career.
Yeah, that's already kind of a weird clubhouse as it is too. When the Ketel Marte trade drama under, I guess some of the noise with a potential Ketel Marte trade. Sorry, I'm dealing with a sinus thing myself right now. I apologize. I'm struggling to breathe out of my nose, and when you talk as much as I do, sometimes it makes it tough. But
Well, Kyle, will you feel better if I talk like this?
yeah, you talk like you can't breathe out of your mouth. I'll talk like I can't breathe out of my nose.
Okay.
But there was some I guess noise coming out when Ketel Marte was on the block that he was hard in the clubhouse. He was not a clubhouse guy, and that was part of the reason why Arizona was going to trade him. So I'm anxious to see how much of that is just noise, how it works for them. But it also is a lesson to Cardinal fans that that any type of rebuild isn't guaranteed. It doesn't matter how smart the people are in the front office or how good the people are in development. Um, it's still a game of people, right? Men, not machines, as TLR would say, Tony La Russa would say. And there's no guarantee that even if you hit a high success that you'll be able to keep that. And of course, like you said, the NL West is a whole different thing than the NL Central, but it's just something to keep in mind that you can have as many smart people in place and as many highly trained and highly technical people in place as possible. But when it comes down to it, baseball is a tough game built on failure, surrounded by failure of constant failure. And it's just being a little more successful in that failure that really catapults teams to the promised land.
Yeah. And, the Marte situation, I can't remember if I talked about this last week or not, but, I think about the Marte parallel to Brendan Donovan, and not only because they were, comparable positions, but the Diamondbacks made a decision, okay, we're going to stop all the talk and we're going to let Marte prepare for the season. We're going to let the team prepare for him to be there. The Cardinals are still leaving Brendan Donovan kind of hanging out there. He's not going to be at winter warm-up this year like he always is. Don't blame him because he doesn't want to answer the questions that he has no control over.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's probably time. I think the Cardinals are probably done for this winter at this point. I'll be interested in getting your opinion on that. And I think it would just be better for all parties to say, hey, we're done. We're done talking about Brendan Donovan. He's a part of our team. We're going forward versus this weird, well, he's available. We're going to wait till the last minute in case somebody, on the 31st of March, comes up with a great deal and we'll trade him at the end of spring training. And granted, that's an extreme. But the other data point is just, and we don't have time to talk about all the arbitration signings, but the Cardinals did not argue with him about his salary for this year, Brendan Donovan. They agreed. The two sides came to agreement. There's not going to be a hearing. There's not going to be any bad blood. Why not go the last step and just say, hey, Don, we listened to everybody's. They've taken offers from him for three plus months now. And if they haven't got an offer they're going to take, I guess they're waiting for somebody to get more desperate at the end.
Yeah, I guess it just comes down to just being desperate at the end, Brian. Yeah, I do think that there's some benefit to being very open with Brendan and being very open with other teams and just saying, hey, look, we're in a position now where we've carved out at least a little bit of our roster jam. We can keep Brendan Donovan. And if you want to revisit this somewhere down the line, we can revisit it somewhere down the line, but we're not moving off our asking price. And then, like you said, if some team does get desperate down the line, then maybe you pull the trigger then. But yeah, it's boy, it's been a weird off season. Is really where my brain goes.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this more in a future episode probably, but I took a look, one of the, here at the Cardinal Nation, we finished the top 50 countdown as we talked about last week, top 50 prospect countdown, but I'm going through a series of 10 articles and we're partway through where we look at the top players by position, we look at ages, we look at history, we look at the guys that joined the list, who fell off the list, et cetera. And one of the things that I looked at was the minor league option situation with the roster. And the Cardinals are in excellent shape. They don't have any of the Edmundo Sosa, who, if he doesn't make the team, we've got to trade him or put him on waivers. They don't have that. So they have a lot of flexibility. If they have to make a decision at the end of camp to send down Sajasi and send down Fermin, and well, I guess Fermin's the one guy that would be not there. But if they have to send down Nathan Church or Prieto or Torres, they can do all that. They've got a lot of flexibility with the roster.
Yeah, that's the best thing that they have going for them right now is roster flexibility and also the option if they wanted to take guys on and off and not really have to worry about what it means for major league impact. Yeah,
I'd still like
yeah,
to see him sort out the catching position a little more, but Herrera catching is still remains to be seen.
yeah. You can sort that out later. There's no urgency to sort that out. That's where I've been. One last thing specifically about our top 50 countdown. Rainiel Rodriguez, Leo Bernal, Jimmy Crooks, all top 10 prospects. We pretty well agree on
Top
that.
seven, by the way.
Exactly. You finished in our top seven, our combined top seven. And we're still back to a lot of people saying this catcher logjam, this catcher logjam, this catcher logjam with Ivan Herrera's and Pedro Pajes and Yohel Pozo, and then all of these prospects. Like, I just want to say one more time, and just to kind of illustrate what we put in the write ups, it is very hard to become a major league caliber catcher. It's near impossible. And you never have a catcher logjam. You never do. Even if you think that your MLB catchers are going to be Pedro Paez and Ivan Herrera, and your AAA catchers are going to be struggling for innings and struggling to catch, and between Crooks and Pozo and Bernal. Look, it'll work itself out. Don't worry about it.
There you have it from Kyle.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the main course for today, and that is the minor league starting pitching rotations. We'll start at the top. St. Louis, McGreevy, Palante, Liberatore, incumbents. Then you got Fitz, May, and Dobbins who are going to be in the picture. That's 6 for 5. We'll see how that sorts out. Maybe one of those guys goes to pen. Maybe one of them goes down. Don't know. Let's assume for now that they're all with St. Louis one way or the other. Now at Memphis, you have Roby, who's injured. Matthews, Rajic, Bedell, who are incumbents. Sem Robertson, probably not going to be ready. Zimmermann, we just talked about. And then you've got Hanson, Motts, and Henderson all, and potentially Tink Hence, all ready to come up. How do you sort out Memphis to start?
Yeah, Brian, I'm glad you prefaced it, and I probably shouldn't repeat it, but I'm going to do it anyways. You have to start by assuming that both Fitz and Dobbins and even Lehigh are going to be in the Cardinals rotation plans, and the other two are going to be in the bullpen plans.
Listen, Kyle Leahy has proven that he can pitch out of the pen. He's a great fallback guy, but I mean they brought Dobbins and Fitz in for a reason, and I just don't. And I sold him short. I've sold Kyle short. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but I agree he's going to be on the major league roster in some role. I just don't think he'll be in the starting 5 unless there's a rash of injuries.
It's interesting. Just one last thought on that is when the Cardinals traded for Fitz, it seemed like they were kind of like, oh, he's more depth. He'll get a chance to compete for a rotation spot, and then he might be in the bullpen. And they still seem to be committing to Kyle Leahy as a starter. That's just my understanding.
Absolutely,
So it'll be
he's coming to camp as a starter, but I've saw lots of guys come to camp as starters. They get 2 or 3 starts, they get shelled, and they're back in the pen. And
yeah,
until that changes, we'll see. Now Palante was one that did it. He had some time as a major league reliever, and then they had, but he also had to spend some time decking AAA to kind of get it straight.
Yeah, I would imagine that's going to be the rotation will be a hot topic this weekend at winter warm up, and we'll have more information on everybody.
Yeah, and of course they'll say we'll see when it gets to camp. We'll let guys pitch.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. All right. So what about Memphis? What do you do there?
I think what you have to start with Memphis, right, is you start with Matthews. He's the one. He's kind of the anchor of that rotation.
He's really the only sure. I shouldn't even say sure thing because, of course, he had a up and down 2025 as well. But he's as close to a sure thing as they have, right?
Yeah, yeah, and exactly, Brian. That's where you have to start. You have to start with him, and he needs to be there, and he needs to be starting. I think after that, my brain immediately goes to Eshawn and it goes to Bryson Mounts. But I think more importantly, Pete Hansen has to be in the AAA rotation because he's old. He's just old, and there's nothing else to really do with him. I guess if you say right now that he's not a major league caliber, he's really just organizational depth. He can stay in AA, which is a whole different beast together.
I guess it gets down to, do you push Rajic and Bedell aside?
Yeah, well, or you do what I think they're going to do and what they have to do based on the 750 names I have on my 7 pieces of paper here, is they're going to do exactly what they did last year. Is they're going to be very conservative with their starting pitchers. You'll see Bryson Mounts go 60 pitches for his first 5 starts, and then they'll piggyback off of him with Bedell or Rajic, is my guess, and let the first couple months sort themselves out. Like, that's what's going to happen here. It has to happen that way because they just have too much pitching depth otherwise to do it any other way, unless of course they get to spring training and some of these guys are out of shape and they don't like them and they can start cutting them off of their minor league system. That's the only way that this works, Brian.
So let's just take the scenario where Matthews and Zimmermann, the pickup, are starting, and Hanson, Motts, and Henderson. That's a 5-man left-handed starting rotation at AAA.
Yeah, except I mean, like you said, if unless Hens finds his way in there, and then
Oh yeah. Sorry, I keep forgetting about Tink Hence, and I
yeah,
shouldn't. I
yeah,
think the Cardinals have to push Tink Hence
yeah,
again. But as we heard from Chaim Bloom earlier this winter, and this is something I know if you don't ask it, I'll ask it.
yeah.
How serious are they about this thought of moving him to relief? The fact that Chaim Bloom talked about it publicly, that they were discussing it internally, would suggest to me that it's more than just a whim.
Absolutely, Brian. Absolutely. I'm glad we're going to get the opportunity to talk it over. But yeah, that's and the funny thing about the four lefties, I mean, I guess in some ways Hanson and Zimmerman are a little alike. It's kind of a fastball changeup profile with um, a, a, a vast array of off-speed offerings here and there with diminished velocity. But like they're all different too. They all throw fastball changeups, but they're all different in the way they kind of go about it. So it would be really fascinating. But yeah, look, I think that's what it boils down to in Memphis. You have to bring the three lefties from Springfield that finished the year there, Hanson, Henderson, and Mounts. They have to be there, and then and in the rotation, and so does Quinn Matthews. And honestly, if you're committed to putting Tink Hence in the bullpen, I don't think it matters what that other option is, unless you're planning on stretching guys out to be prepared for long relief roles, which could
I
be
guess
happening.
I agree with you with the one exception, and I am less sure about Hanson. I'm just,
Yeah.
I mean, given his questionable future, and he's what, our 32nd ranked prospect. It's not like he's top chop liver by any stretch of the imagination, but he's behind these other guys, and there's only going to be so many rotation spots at the major league level. So at some point in time, you're going to take these guys and say, hey, sorry, you're going to be a reliever, or you're going to be a tandem, back end of a tandem, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. Though I'm already in the out with the old, in with the new. And even though he's not new, he's just the new next middling starting pitching prospect in the same ilk in some ways as Rajic and Bedell. And I was like, oh, that didn't work out for those guys. And they have interesting reliever profiles as righties. Let's move on to the next thing. So I'm glad you said that, because I am being a little dismissive in a way that I shouldn't be.
Well, I don't know if you're being dismissive. I might be being dismissive of Pete Hansen. Um, so let's talk about Springfield now. Hansel Rincon should be back as far as we know, although we don't really know much about his injury, do we? Or do we?
It was a hip thing, was my
Oh, that's right.
understanding.
That's right. That's right. You mentioned that previous week. So hopefully he'll be ready to come back. If Hanson, Motts, and Henderson are gone, of course, Jerpy's not ready yet. Hence may move up. But you've got Chen Wei Lin, who came up at the end of the year. Do you think Doyle is going to start in the rotation at Springfield? I will come right up front and say I do not, but I'm interested in your opinion.
Brian, I have him written down in the Springfield rotation. And let me tell you why. Because never in a million years ago, and again, it's a little bit different regime, but really the player development side is still the same as last year in a lot of ways. I was not in favor of them pushing JJ Weatherholt to Springfield to start the year. I thought that he needed to go to Peoria. I thought it was the right thing to do. Just like
And
I do with
obviously he looked very good wherever he played last year, but he's a position player and Doyle's a pitcher.
yeah, yeah, but I think that they also understand the importance of prospect cachet. And if you leave him at Double A all year, I also think that they're gonna the thing that they kept going to the thing that they kept going to with Weatherholt was he was ready for the competition level. So what they'll decide with Doyle is if he's ready for the Double A competition level, and I think that's going to be the crux of their decision. They're going to say this kid's ready for the competition level. It's going to be rocky. It's going to be his toughest test. If he goes to high A, he's not going to get tested at all. So let's put him there and let's see how it goes.
Hmm.
So I do think, and honestly, to be honest with you, Brian, when I look at this list, it's the easiest way to make it all work in some ways, unless something changes drastically. But yeah, I do. I think that he would be in the very serious discussion for the Springfield rotation to start the 2026 season.
All right, we will put a pin in that. I'm not convinced of that yet, but depends on what I see down here in Jupiter this spring. What about Ryan Murphy, the guy they picked up from the Giants in the Rule 5 draft? Is he starting material?
So I think it'll be one of two things with him. I think he'll either go to the Memphis bullpen or he'll go to the Springfield rotation, is what I think. I would imagine that he'll be, because he's already 26. if he starts in the Springfield rotation, which could very well happen. I mean, maybe the easiest way to keep Doyle at Peoria, but that Peoria thing is a whole different conversation we'll get into in a second. But the easiest way to keep Doyle lower than Double A is for Ryan Murphy to start at Springfield, or even to get a little crazy with some of the AAA arms and keep them at Double A or move them back down to Double A. Of course, one prospect we haven't talked about or written about or anything. I know somebody who you're higher on than I am is Brant Thompson. Brant Thompson's season ended last year, and I don't know what that injury was.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Peoria for a minute because Brant Thompson is he had some time in Springfield, they moved him back down. I'm being conservative here, Kyle, and I
Yeah,
have 9 starting pitchers at Peoria. 9. Franklin,
right. I have
Davila, Braden Davis, and then Molina, Dome, Elisalt, the guys it picked up, Clark, Aida, and then Brant Thompson. How do you sort through that? You're going to say tandem again because that's the easy solution, but is that what they're going to do, and is that the right way to go?
so that's part of why I think that they're going to have to be aggressive in some capacity, right? Like I think about somebody like Jason Savakul. Savakul is kind of an interesting prospect because honestly, he's not a prospect, and more than likely, he's the kind of guy who has one more year in the organization before he finds his way out of the organization. He just doesn't have anything loud. He doesn't throw strikes particularly well,
And
but it does.
Savacool kind of got moved out of starting later in the year anyway, right?
And he got moved out of starting a little later in the year. But if he comes to spring, maybe the easiest way to keep everybody on a slow and steady path through their minor league development in 2026 is to move him to Double A and just let him get beat up at Double A like they did with Kyle Leahy years and years ago. But that was just because they had they were low on arms and they needed somebody there, and they thought, well, it was not going to hurt to put Leahy there.
Yeah, I mean, you got him. You got Gerardo Salas. Finley. I guess Finley's probably going to remain a reliever. There's other guys beyond those 9, but I mean, there are 9 legitimate guys
Yeah.
who have high A experience already, and I haven't
Yeah.
even talked about anybody coming up from Palm Beach.
Yeah, and that's Brian. I'm telling you, they're going to have to be aggressive with at least one of these guys to make it work at Double A. And I don't know if that's Doyle or whoever, but really, Double A. I mean, it's so easy to be like, oh my God, there's all these pitchers in Memphis, of varying skill levels, and you look down and you're like Peoria and Palm Beach, but really Springfield is the tough one to project. And the only way to make it work is to be somewhat aggressive, and it's just a matter of how aggressive they're going to be. Are they going to try to be?
It's just that Doyle's a high risk aggressive. I mean, what you don't want to do is get his brains beat in by Texas League Texas League hitting, and then have to back him off.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's Griffin Roberts, right? Where he's at Double A and he can't throw a strike, and he's getting hammered, even though he's got a pretty solid fastball and a great breaking pitch. You're right about that. You're right. So I guess what you have to do is you have to trust their decision making. Once they see how Doyle comes to spring training, what he's looking like.
Yeah, I can't argue it either way. I just go back to the local folks who are, some of the media folks are, setting expectations. We're going to see Doyle in St. Louis by August. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's great if it happens, but what we saw in Toronto this year is a very unique situation. I don't think we should expect that that's going to happen everywhere.
No, and it wouldn't happen with your Savage too if they weren't making the playoff run. So and that's probably not in the cards for the Cardinals this year. So
Yeah.
that definitely plays into it. Brian, I've got 12 names for my Peoria rotation.
Well, there you go. There you go. So let me try it this way, Kyle.
Yeah.
If you had to pick 5, and it's not fair because nobody's thrown a pitch this year yet, but if you had to pick 5, who are your top 5?
Well, I'm doing Brandon Clark to start. Absolutely.
That's an easy one. Our number 6 prospect.
Absolutely. Tanner Franklin would be my second.
Good one.
You might as well. That's probably the smart thing to do. Remember, at this point, I have Liam Doyle in my Springfield rotation, so that's that would
Yep.
be
Yep.
that eliminates him. At that point, I would do Blake Aida. I would do Frank Elisalt if Elisalt is healthy, and I would probably, even though we ended the year in the bullpen, and pretty much pitch out of the bullpen in the Arizona Fall League, I would have Darlin Saladin as my 5th starter.
Really?
I would,
Really?
yeah. The gains that he made on his fastball. It depends on how everything's measuring in spring. If his fastball's mid 90s and he's, he really worked on a changeup in the Arizona Fall League, and that could be a real big difference maker for him. And
Now Saladin actually ended in Springfield, so you'd bring him back to Peoria and start him.
yeah. Well, keep in mind that Springfield thing. That was he. I don't even think he pitched in Springfield.
Yeah, that
right?
was bring him up and get him ready for the AFL, and yeah.
So I mean, granted, it would be repeating the level, and maybe he does.
Go
No, I
ahead.
was gonna say maybe he does make more sense in Springfield because of that little and his age and his trajectory. But I would not be surprised if he's one of the starting pitchers.
The one I'm surprised about is Braden Davis.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
Brian,
surprised Braden Davis wasn't in your top five because he'd be in my top five.
let me tell you, I currently have Braden Davis starting in Springfield.
Woohoo! I
Yeah,
missed that completely. So
I know.
we're gonna have like lefty starters, lefty predominant rotations everywhere.
Everywhere. It doesn't matter what you try to do. Even with bringing in a bunch of right-handed starters this offseason, all you right-handed pitchers, all you really have is left-handed pitchers up and down. Yeah, like in
Well,
my Springfield.
I feel better that Davis wasn't the reason Davis wasn't in your top five at Peoria is because you think he should move up. I feel better about that.
Yeah, I think at some point you have to be aggressive. Now, it depends on what you're trying to achieve with Braden Davis, in my opinion. Like, is he's trying to corral his command, which is really his big issue? Then yeah, I mean, maybe you keep him at Peoria, but how's his command going to improve at Peoria as opposed to Springfield? I don't know. I think at some point you have to put your stuff and your pedigree a little higher.
Don't you think though that being comfortable with your surroundings will help you improve your control? I mean, there's a lot of pressure pitching in Double A for the first time, and it just
Absolutely.
seems to me like and again, I'm not thinking about the clock and all of that, but I'm
Yeah.
just thinking, gee, I'd like to have Davis get a little success in consistently throwing strikes and not throwing so many balls
Yeah.
at Peoria before I move him up to Springfield.
I agree. I agree. I agree. But when I look at this list and I think, well, what was the difference between Isha, like Bryson Mounts last year? His stuff got better. His stuff got better, and that's why he went to Springfield and had success.
And why he was the organizational pitcher of the year a year after I dropped him down
Yeah.
in the 40s in my rankings.
Exactly. Exactly, Brian, because his stuff got
Guys
better.
can improve. The lesson here is guys can improve. We shouldn't pigeonhole guys, and I'm guilty of it as much as anybody else.
Yeah, me too, bud. Me too, Brian. And also it goes to show you that like right now as we project, we don't know what these guys are going to come into spring training looking like and feeling like. And to your point about development not being linear and not knowing and pigeonholing prospects and assuming that they're not going to grow because they haven't grown in a year and a half, like a lot changes in an off season, and there's a lot to learn from what you see and what you haven't seen yet. So when I look at this list, I just think like other than guys who don't really matter, like Savakul, uh, I think that no disrespect to the Savakul family, Brian. I feel
Well,
like
we'll
we're
throw Gerardo Salas and a few others in there so he doesn't feel like he's alone.
yeah, and Salas's stuff played up in the bullpen. He was getting up to 98 miles an hour with his fastball. His off-speed pitches were better. I think that he's going to be in the bullpen because of that. And also, there's this rumor that the Cardinals are really going to start developing multi-inning relievers. So that kind of plays into how this is all going to shape up as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I've heard those same rumors for years, but it doesn't ever seem to happen.
yeah, it's a great thought. It's a great thought exercise.
I've heard it many times.
Yeah, that's almost impossible to play out because once you get 3 weeks into the season, even in the minor leagues with Monday off every week, uh, you're like, oh wait, that multi-inning reliever I used Monday and Friday of last week, and now they're completely gassed for the next 10 days. So yeah, that's all just to say that like when I look at this list, when I look at that kind of hole at Springfield, the guys that I'm going to be aggressive with are going to be guys with good stuff that will help buoy them as they work on their mechanical issues, rather than guys with crap stuff or average stuff that also still have kind of command issues that will not do anything for the organization or the team or the players.
All right, so now I've got conservatively 8 more guys at Palm Beach.
Yeah.
Do you have anybody from the Palm Beach rotation moving up? We got Sequeira, Odell,
So
Sparks, Infante, Ducanich, Batista, Van Dyke, Fallardo, the new acquisition.
yeah.
Are all those guys going to start in Class A, or are some of them going to move up to Peoria and join the 9 or 10 or 12 that are already there?
Well, let me tell you what gets me about Peoria before we even get to Palm Beach is like Sequeira has to go to Palm Beach or to Peoria. He has to. And I don't even know how you make that work either, unless of course you're moving Saladin. And also like the Cardinals traded for Mason Molina to be a starter. They didn't trade for him to be a reliever. And he
And
has
then
to
I don't, yeah, I mean, we didn't even hardly bring him up or dome. I mean,
that's
they brought these guys in and they haven't had a chance to have a full spring training with the organization.
yeah. Yeah. So at some point, both Dome and both Molina in particular, yeah, like those guys are going to start. They're going to get their innings. My guess is that what I would do at Peoria is different than what the Cardinals are going to do. It'll be Molina, it'll be Dome, it'll be Aida, it'll be Clark, and it'll probably be Sequeira more than likely with whatever happens with Saladin, whether it be bullpen or whatever, and Franklin in there too. So I don't know how they make all that work. Which brings me to what goes on at Palm Beach as I go back to my sheet here because it's it really gets to your mind. Cade Crossland's going to start because the Cardinals are already like on the forefront of getting his name out there to scouts and to scouting services. They're doing everything they can. I've already started to see him as one of the guys who could be a breakout candidate in the Cardinals organization. That means the Cardinals are supplying them with that information. Ethan Young, the fifth round pick after you would figure he's probably going
Is
to
he
be.
ready to? Is he going to be healthy to start the season though?
I guess we'll find out. I'm under the impression he is, but I
Yeah,
don't know for sure.
but
And then
Graham definitely won't be.
yeah, exactly. Peyton Graham won't be. And then you have to figure Ty Van Dyke earned his starting spot. And then from there, it just gets weird. I would assume
Well,
that the
come on,
most recent.
they got to start Fallardo. They just brought him in too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Fiardo's one of them. But where it also gets interesting too is now they've got this Martinez, who you would think he plays into the Palm Beach rotation as well. So, which is nothing, of course, for Odell and Mack and Sparks and Dukanich. It's not like any of these guys too. Like they all are intriguing. They
And
all
let's
have a
not
lot.
forget about Brian Holiday, who may be healthy, and if I mean he was looking really good before he got hurt.
Yeah, and I would suspect that we'll see him at Palm Beach, but they'll be aggressive with him. I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden by the end of the year he's at Springfield if he's healthy. He might get a taste of Palm Beach, a couple starts there, and then they'll get him to Peoria quick. I have no doubt about that. Like they have a year and a half of development to make up with him, and that's not bringing him along slow or being careful. It's putting him, I mean, still being careful, but putting him probably where he needs to be at high A. So I guess, Brian, for me, the way to kind of rope this together, to kind of put a bow on this conversation is if I'm in charge, the only things that I know for sure is at Memphis, it's Matthews, Motts, Eshawn, and Hanson. And then whatever happens around there happens around there. At Springfield, it's Hansel Rincon, Shenhui Lin, and Brant Thompson. And then whatever happens around there happens around there. And then at high A, it's Brandon Clark, it's Mason Molina, Tanner Franklin, and then whatever happens around there happens around there. And then at Palm Beach, if he's healthy, Ethan Young, Cade Crossland, Ty Van Dyke, Brian Holiday if he's healthy, and then whatever happens around them happens around them. That's just how I view the prospect importance, tiering, and potential within this slosh of pitching depth I use in quotation marks in the Cardinals organization.
Well, it's exciting to have this many guys to talk about. Obviously, not all these guys are going to come through, but the fact that there are so many horses in the race, and it's more than we've had to talk about in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, which does nothing for guys like Ty Brott, who they still love and champion, who probably he's been a reliever now, but we didn't even get into the relievers. It's a fun time. I don't know how many of these guys are going to make the majors or even get to AAA, but I do know that they're exciting arms who do exciting things with exciting traits, and we haven't had that in forever.
Kyle, you did a great job of summarizing this. I appreciate you writing down all 750 names, because we didn't have time to mention every one of the names, but I think you did a great job of summarizing where you think it's going to lay out. We don't agree in every case, but that's okay because none of us know for sure what's going to happen.
Brian, I will have the "We Didn't Start the Fire" version of the Cardinals 2026 pitching depth written and sung for you when I see you this weekend.
I think that even Billy Joel, if I remember right, was quoted as saying that is not one of his favorite songs.
He's
All right.
smart.
So the last piece of news we have that's going to happen between now and even winter warm-up when we assemble on Saturday morning, and that is that the international signing deadline, or the opening of the signing period, I should say, is going to occur this Thursday, and the Cardinals will have a press release announcing, I don't know, 10, 12, 15. There have been a lot of names connected with them because a lot of these commitments are made long, long in advance. And so, by the time that they announce them on January 15th, most of them have gone through all their checks and background checks and physical checks and everything, and they can go forward. Once in a while, a few guys fall out. But the cornerstone is this 16-year-old outfielder named Emmanuel Luna, who's going to get anywhere to 3 to 4 million. And by the way, the Cardinals have like over 8 million to spend, so they're in the top tier of of teams, and they didn't lose a $500,000 this year like they did each of the last 2 years for signing veteran major league free agents, which is going to give them some more money to work with in the international market. What are you hearing about what's going to happen and what people should be looking forward?
Well, I think you really do have to start with Luna. It feels like it's been a long time since the Cardinals have signed a hitting prospect. Rainiel's a different story. That's a whole different beast. I don't really want to talk about that. It's not in the same kind of thing, but like it feels like it's been a long time
Well,
since the Cardinals.
Rainiel received $300,000 to sign, not $3 million.
Exactly. And even like the guys that they've signed for high dollars, Brunelli Franco, I know they gave him quite a bit of money. I think it was like
Yeah,
1.8.
800,000.
Okay. All right.
They
But
haven't spent a lot of money on a hitter in some time.
exactly.
Jonathan Mejia was the last big one in 2022. He got $2 million, and he
Yeah.
hasn't panned out yet.
Yeah. Jonathan Machado, Jonathan Mejia. I remember both of those
Yeah,
guys getting.
Machado back to 2017. That was back when they were bringing in Adolis and Randy
Yeah.
Garcia. I mean, Adolis Garcia and Randy Rosarena.
Yeah. So I think Luna, just to say that like Luna it's been a long time since the Cardinals have spent a lot of money on one prospect from the international class. And you framed it perfect, Brian. Like the whole system is kind of a mess. It's a joke. There's no telling how long ago the Cardinals had a deal in place with Emmanuel Luna or his representatives. But the good news is he's continued to progress in a really positive way since they had that agreement, however long ago it was. And he's going to sign with the Cardinals. He's a big-bodied outfielder with a ton of speed and a ton of like a great frame to put on more weight and some really loud tools and like I said, some real potential power. Nothing worth talking about now because he's still like 8 years old. I think he's entering the third grade or something like that. So let's not maybe get crazy about it, even with that excitement. But
Yeah, I can't pencil him in as a starting right fielder in 2029.
yes, well, no, go ahead, do it. Plenty of other people are probably doing it for us,
Yes,
Brian.
that's
So
absolutely
we
true.
might as well jump on the bandwagon.
Well, that'll give us something to talk about next week as well. I'm sure we'll have plenty of news from winter warm-up as well. We'll get updates on injured guys, their time back, and some of that. And should be a fun time. Looks like the weather will be okay, so maybe we won't lose any to ice storms or anything like it's happened in the past.
Yes, yeah, and the best thing about my new job that I have since I moved to Charleston is even if it's snowing in St. Louis, sure, it might make my drive home to Illinois a little bit more treacherous, but I don't have to go into work, Brian. So
Yay!
I am there. There's no getting rid of me. I'm excited, Brian. I'm excited to see you. I'm excited to talk it over.
Well, we'll see you on Saturday. And thanks everyone again for listening and watching to the January 14th edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. And of course, we will see you again on the 21st. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you, Brian.